What if I told you that your inability to start isn't a character flaw, but an intelligent survival strategy? For the perfectionist, failure isn't just a data point. It's an existential threat. Your nervous system isn't being lazy, it's trying to protect you. It has decided that staying still is the only way to stay intact. Let's talk about the biological cage of high standards. We are told from a young age that perfection is the ultimate destination, a gold standard, a badge of honor for the disciplined and ambitious. But for many of us, perfectionism isn't a ladder. It's a cage. Psychologists have discovered something crucial. Perfectionism is not actually about high standards. It is a defense mechanism. It is a shield. At its core, perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfectly, look perfectly, and act perfectly, we can avoid or minimize the painful feelings of shame, judgment, and blame. It's an armor we wear to protect a fragile ego that whispers, "I am only as valuable as my latest achievement." When your self-worth is fused with competence, when your sense of self is closely tied to being the best, any mistake isn't just a technical error, it's an existential threat. If the painting is bad, you are bad. If the business fails, you are a failure. This is what we call the mirror's trap, the belief that if you cannot be flawless, you shouldn't exist at all. Here's something most advice about perfectionism skips over. Failure does not hit everyone equally. For some people, failure is information, feedback, a data point. For others, failure feels like a verdict, a fundamental statement about who they are. From a biological perspective, this makes perfect sense. When something feels identity-threatening, your nervous system doesn't treat it like a task, it treats it like a threat. And when threat levels rise, the brain shifts priorities. Exploration shuts down. Risk tolerance drops, creativity narrows, movement feels dangerous. You don't become lazy, you become cautious, highly cautious. Your nervous system has learned something early on. If I don't try, I can't be exposed. If I delay, I stay intact. To prevent this total collapse of identity, your brain does something brilliant and devastating. It chooses self-handicapping. You sabotage yourself on purpose. You stay up late watching mindless videos before a big presentation. Why? Because it gives you an out. If you fail, you can say, "I just didn't sleep," instead of, "I wasn't good enough." What looks like self-sabotage from the outside is actually a very intelligent survival strategy on the inside. There is a specific kind of silence that haunts the perfectionist. It's the silence of the unmade choice. Perfectionism often runs on a quiet, unspoken bargain. If I wait long enough, if I prepare enough, if I refine this just a little more, then I can avoid the kind of failure that would hurt too much. So you don't quit, you hover. You stay in the planning phase, the learning phase, the imagining phase. It feels productive, safe, controlled. We call this analysis paralysis. In your mind, you are playing out 1,000 different scenarios, trying to find the one path that guarantees a perfect outcome. But because perfection is an impossibility, you find no such path. So you stand still. You become a collector of beginnings and a stranger to endings. Consider the all-or-nothing cognitive distortion. For the perfectionist, there is no spectrum between 0 and 100. There is only the peak of the mountain and the abyss at the bottom. This binary way of thinking turns every task into a life-or-death struggle. By procrastinating, you keep the dream of perfection alive. As long as you don't finish that work, it still has the potential to be a masterpiece. The moment you finish it, it becomes real. It becomes flawed. It becomes human. And that is what scares you the most. Here's the paradox that keeps perfectionism alive. The more capable you are, the higher the stakes feel. You can imagine how good the outcome could be, which also means you can imagine how painful it would be if it fell short. So the bar rises, and the window for action shrinks. Eventually, waiting feels safer than trying, and potential becomes a place you live instead of a place you visit. This is not because you don't want growth. It's because you don't want loss. Your world doesn't shrink because you lack ability. It shrinks because your system has decided that movement is dangerous. To heal, we must perform a radical act. We must embrace what I call the gospel of the average. In a world obsessed with being the top 1%, There is a quiet rebellion in being okay with being good enough. This is not about lowering your standards. It is about reclaiming your freedom. What if failure isn't proof that you are inadequate? What if it's proof that you are participating? Failure only happens to people who show up before they feel fully protected. People who are willing to be seen mid-process, mid-learning, mid-becoming. In that sense, failure isn't the opposite of perfection. It's the opposite of hiding. Think of the Japanese art of kintsugi. When a bowl is broken, the masters don't throw it away, nor do they try to hide the cracks. They repair the seams with gold. The flaws are not hidden, they are illuminated. The bowl is considered more beautiful because it was broken. You need to give yourself the permission to be trash. Write the bad first draft. Paint the ugly picture. Launch the flawed business. When you allow yourself to be bad, the perfectionist overseer in your head loses its power. You are no longer performing for an invisible audience. You are simply being. Success is not the absence of failure. Success is a mountain made of failures that you stood on top of. Dear failure, you do not mean I wasn't good enough. You mean I allowed reality to touch me before I was fully armored. You mean I chose movement over control, experience over image. Yes, you hurt, but not because I did something wrong. You hurt because I care, because I am invested, because I am alive to the outcome. That pain is not a flaw in my character. It is a signal of depth. You are not the opposite of success. You are the fabric of it. You are the proof that I was in the arena. You are the evidence that I dared to be seen. So I am learning to welcome you not because I seek you out, but because I refuse to let the fear of you keep me frozen any longer. Here is the shift that matters. You don't need to lower your standards. You need to stop using them as a shield. Instead of asking, will this be good enough? Try asking, am I willing to be seen learning this? Instead of waiting for certainty, practice tolerating exposure. Small exposure, imperfect exposure. Not to prove anything, but to teach your nervous system that you survive being unfinished. Progress for you will not feel bold. It will feel vulnerable. It will look like sharing something before it feels ready, submitting something before it feels perfect, continuing even after disappointment, and letting the world respond to your unfinished self. And when failure happens, because it will, it won't mean you were wrong about yourself. It will mean you were brave enough to let reality in. This letter is for the person who is tired of holding their breath. It is for the artist who hasn't picked up a brush in years because they're afraid of the first stroke. It is for anyone who has ever felt that their potential is a prison. Perfectionism is not your enemy. It is a sign that you care deeply about integrity, meaning, and impact. But when it turns inward, it doesn't protect your potential. It preserves it in silence. Failure, on the other hand, is noisy, visible, human, and sometimes it's the only thing that can loosen perfectionism's grip. So here is your challenge for today. Go out and fail at something small. Be mediocre. Be messy. Break the mirror. You don't need to earn the right to begin. You just need to begin before you feel ready. Because on the other side of that, perfectionism isn't failure, it's the rest of your life. And I promise you, the reality of a flawed life is infinitely more beautiful than the fantasy of a perfect one. If this resonated, if you recognized yourself in this quiet struggle, you're not broken. You're just learning how to let yourself be seen. And that, paradoxically, is where real mastery begins.